feel like it's been a while since I last spoke to a camera. I was studying. Venus over here was pretty locked in. And then David's on the bed. Emily actually left to go back to school. She's not going to stay with us tonight, but we finished eating dinner and we're basically all ready to go to bed. But it is quite early. I think it's only 9, and we were planning to just do work the entire time at the hotel since it is our last night staying in Boston. But I wanted to come on and give a little book haul because we went shopping today. They're all over here. The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. This one was not a book that I had on my TBR, I don't believe. And then I finally got a Jane Austen book. This is Persuasion. I originally wanted to get Pride and Prejudice, but I was having a pretty difficult time choosing between the Oxford World Classics or the Penguin Classics cover. I thought both of them looked gorgeous, and I just could not choose between the two. So then I opted out for Persuasion instead because I actually don't like the Penguin Classics cover to that book. And then my friend got Meiko Kawakami's Heaven. This is the book that I recommended to her, so she bought it. And yeah, that was all that we've got today in regards to books. But for the trip, I did bring Ghosts, and I am a little distraught just because October is coming to an end, and I have yet to begin this. We will be going back to the city tomorrow morning, and then I have a midterm in a few days, so that's why I decided to spend the rest of tonight studying. I wanted to mention some of the books that I picked up. I completely forgot to talk about these because I've been so busy the past several days, so I didn't even get a chance to film anything. As I've mentioned before at Boston, the 2 books that I bought there were The Turn of the Screw by Henry James and Persuasion by Jane Austen. But before that, I was looking through my bookshelf and I was starting to really dislike the cover that I got for Wuthering Heights. I was kind of bummed out that I even chose that to begin with. It was the Signature Classics edition. Luckily, my friend, David, my book club buddy, he really liked the cover that I got for Wuthering Heights, and he already had it on his TBR too. So I decided to gift him my copy for his birthday and gave myself an excuse to buy the Penguin Classics cover instead. So that's what I got. And then I also stopped by the secondhand bookstore by Mercer Street in Soho. It's called Mercer Books. 3 Summers by Margarita Liberaki. This is translated from Greek by Karen Van Dyck, and I got it for half the price. It's in pristine condition, and it's an NYRB, so I couldn't pass it up. This was originally on my TBR. I didn't plan to read it this summer, just hopefully one summer. And then I also went window shopping at McNally Jackson, and I walked out with 2 books. I got another Jane Austen. This is Emma. I really like this cover. I also liked the Penguin Classics cover, which is, I believe it's a painting of a residential house. It was very scenic, but the more I look at this one, I like this cover way more. Lastly, The Wall by Marlene Haushofer. I believe she's an Australian author. Oh, not Australian, Austrian author. So it's probably translated from German by Sean Whiteside. I'm very keen to reading this one. So those were my pickups. I do want to choose my November hopefuls, so I'm going to bring you guys to my bookshelf. The last time I filmed here, it was not as crowded as it is right now. I am still reading Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I'm around the 90% mark, considering my reading pace. I think I can finish it by the end of this week. And assuming that I would roughly have 2 more months left till November, I did want to pick out a relatively shorter book. And with that, I did have 3 options. The first one being Bitter Water Opera by Nicolette Pollack. This is contemporary read about the fine arts. My second option was an NYRB. This is My Phantoms by Gwendolyn Riley. Another contemporary book, except it follows a mother and daughter relationship. I've already read several books regarding that dynamic, and I find it so interesting that I can't help but read more of it. So I did want to keep this one on the lookout. And lastly, Henry James, The Turn of the Screw. This is a Gothic classic about a governess and 2 orphans who are being stalked by who knows what. I do think this book might be too spooky for November, but I did end up asking my friends on Instagram via the poll sticker. My Phantoms came in at first place, with Bitter Water Opera coming in at a close second. So I'm just going to base it off of that and choose My Phantoms. I whipped out my, what do we even call this? The weather's gotten colder, so that's why I'm in this. I wanted to come on here because I suddenly felt the need to share some book thoughts that I've been having on the books I've read so far. The past 2 months of October and November has been extremely hectic for me. I have a lot of work, meetings, and events to attend, so I couldn't really dedicate much time to go into depth of the books that I've read, and I thought now would be a great time to do so. I'm trying to remember the last book that I left off on. I believe it was The Juniper Tree by Barbara Comyns. I can't really recollect where I left off on, so I'm just going to say The Juniper Tree. I thoroughly enjoyed the book. After reading the book, I will say that it's just reaffirmed my feelings that I have for Barbara Comyns as a writer. I think she's a brilliant writer. It's just made me more excited to read all of her works. I will say The Vet's Daughter is still my favorite, but that does not mean The Juniper Tree was bad in any way. You could tell that her style of writing and the characters in all of her books somewhat and somehow overlap, but that does not mean each of these stories feel generic. I think they are unique in their own way, have their own unique value to it. I didn't get much context about The Juniper Tree other than the fact that it was a Grimm Brothers retelling. I don't know anything about the Grimm Brothers version of the story, so I can't really compare the two. The next 2 books that I could remember were both written by Japanese authors. The first one that I'll go over is Under the Eye of the Big Bird by Hiromi Kawakami, I believe. It was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize this year, and I hate to say it, but it honestly was forgettable. Now that I'm saying it out loud, I feel kind of bummed out because I remember when I first started reading it, I had a lot of thoughts, but then midway through, I got bored of the book, and those thoughts didn't necessarily apply to the rest of the book. It almost read like a collection of short stories. The characters in each of these short stories intertwine. Everything that happens in each chapter surrounds this specific dystopian realm. I will say this though, it is heavily honing in on gender norms. From what I can remember, there were very, very, very few men and quite a bit of woman or motherly roles. Because there were so little men, they were almost viewed like prized possessions. And as you could probably guess, the woman, their main role was to reproduce and hopefully birth a boy to keep the human species alive and thriving. I wouldn't recommend it. It is... I can't really say much because I can't remember a lot of the book, so now I feel guilty for some reason. Anyways, we'll move past that and we'll go straight into Strange Pictures by Uketsu. This is a whodunit mystery book, a collection of unrelated drawings somehow pieced together a storyline. Trying my best not to give out much spoilers because this is a type of book that you just have to go in without knowing anything. So I'll keep it at that. And then the next book was Ghosts by Edith Wharton. I actually have it right here. A collection of short stories about paranormal activity. I thought this was so cleverly written. It's not your typical ghost story. It's not going to really give you jump scares or feel extremely horrifying. But something Edith Wharton has done with her short stories is that even though they are all surrounded by some sort of paranormal or ghostly figure, she was able to prove that nothing is more scary than the real living world and living people, which I thought was so cleverly done. It was great. I have a lot of 4 and 5 stars. I thought each of these stories were distinct in their own way. I could even remember a lot of them. It's a completely different day. The last book that I talked about was Ghosts by Edith Wharton, and not long after I finished reading Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I read it on my Kindle, but I was also listening to the audiobook simultaneously, and safe to say, I had a very pleasurable reading experience. I can tell why this is a classic and so beloved by many. The book is so atmospheric and beautifully written. Daphne du Maurier uses like a flowery prose, but there's this fogginess within, like lying underneath. So it's extremely smooth, but then it's also sharp at times, extremely poignant. I really enjoyed the book. I did mention that I wanted to go more into depth of my recent reads. However, I backed away from that plan just because I wanted to do a final reading wrap up of the books I've read in 2025, and I was just realizing how long of a video that will be. So instead, I'll go more into depth of my favorite books that I've read this year, and that will be in a separate video. One more thing, I was editing the last clip several days ago, and I apologize for how terribly spoken I was. I didn't map out or plan a script, nor did I write out any notes of the things that I wanted to talk about. I was just saying things from the top of my head. So that concludes my book thoughts. I hope you guys all had a wonderful reading experience during the month of November.